Hello, everyone, and welcome to What Fresh Hell Laughing in the Face of Motherhood. This is Margaret.
And this is Amy. Today, we're talking about our holiday goals, which are we have two: less doing, more magic.
Yeah, I love this. And I think, this has been thematic for us in a ton of ways. And I think it's really interesting as our kids start to get older and their relationship with Christmas changes
Hmm.
that I'm finding the pushback or my push to kind of scale everything down, it's challenging. Like,
Yeah.
although they are kind of aging out of some of the magic of Christmas, they don't want less. That's for sure. I mean,
Right.
they're not like, let's tone it all down.
Yeah.
It's not happening.
Um, I want to start with something one of our listeners, Tiffany, said. She said, I am a make magic girl. I enjoy doing the things I do pick and choose, though. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Are you, because I'm not sure I know the answer, are you a make magic girl? Are you into Christmas?
10,000%. I mean, I love Christmas. I love the, magic of it. I loved it as a kid. I still love it as an adult. Um, my nephew was just here and saying, "Well, when does Christmas really start?" And I said, "Okay, this is not." He said, "Do you have an opinion on that?" I said, "I don't have an opinion. I have a fact. Christmas starts the moment Santa appears in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. That
Oh,
is the
that's it.
beginning of the Christmas season."
That used to be my job in my younger years. One of my many acting jobs was being Mrs. Santa, not in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, but at different malls around the United States. I would show up and I'd sing a few songs. I had like a set show, and then I'd be like, "And here he is," and he'd come in, and it was one of my favorite acting jobs ever.
I worked as an elf, at the World Trade Center. That tells you a little bit how long ago this was, for a real beard Santa, and, I
The best
can't say
kind.
I loved it. It paid really well. It was like $500 a day, that gig. It was such a good gig.
Which, right, for an out of work actor
But
back then
I
was a lot of
mean,
money.
I could write an essay about it, except for that David Sedaris has already written
Mhm.
the what do you call it, formative essay on being a Christmas elf,
Yeah,
but
he got a whole career out of it.
90% of the job is keeping children from assaulting Santa. Like, it's
Yeah.
funny. Like, you're basically a Secret Service agent dressed in a merry way because kids, sweet, gigantic 12-year-old kids would take a running leap from like 10 feet away to leap upon Santa's lap. And he was a real beard Santa. He was an older
He was a
gentleman, and
human
he
being.
he couldn't
His beard
handle
was
the
real.
everything was real,
So was his bad hip.
yeah, exactly. He could not handle the leaping children.
So make magic. Am I a make magic girl? I'm gonna ask myself that. And the answer is sometimes. Sometimes. Definitely when my kids were little, I really dug it. This year, I am not feeling it for many reasons.
Yeah.
For many reasons, I am not really feeling it this year. And I am feeling I'm like Hodor, and the people at the door are like, when you have your kids' lists, I really want to get it started on my shopping, or here's my kids' list so you can get started on your shopping. And I'm like, go away. I don't want to do it this year, but I do. I mean, it's also the only thing that will save me.
Yeah, I am similar. I had a long talk with my sister yesterday, who I think is feeling this times 10. Um, and what we came to is lean in with boundaries, basically. Like, I think sometimes this time of year can obviously, for a lot of reasons, be depressing and kind of remind you of what's not there. We've
Mm.
both lost parents, and I think that it comes up really hard around the
Hmm.
holidays, and it there's a lot that can feel bad, and I don't think it's smart to try to be in denial about that and be like, "What? I'm just a merry elf. There's nothing wrong." Like, it's okay to say, like, "This is a time of year where I really miss my mom, miss my dad." Like, those are very real feelings, but I think sometimes there's a temptation, and especially when we feel like the merrymakers and put upon in those ways, to kind of cut off our nose to spite our own face, truly, that like, I'm gonna show everyone how miserable I am by being a Grinch. And I think that instinct, because and I think we've talked about this with birthdays, I think it can become a little bit like I have a huge tendency to do this on my birthday. I know my husband's gonna mess it up. I know he doesn't have enough prepared. So rather than say anything about that or do any guidance, I'm gonna sit back and
Watch him fail.
who's the guy in Lord of the Rings who like, my precious
Gollum.
Gollum, like Gollum, I'm going to stroke the orb of how everyone has failed me.
I feel like it's a little different that, we talked about being kin keepers earlier this year, a term that was new to me at the time, but I certainly know what it is. And I am the kin keeper. I'm
Mhm.
the tree decorator, present spreadsheet keeper. And I don't feel like doing it this year. And it isn't necessarily that I want to like make sure everybody has a lame holiday season. It's that I want somebody else to do it this year. I want somebody else to keep me instead of being the kin keeper this year, but it's probably not going to happen. So, um,
Yeah,
you need to like figure out how to like, just get going, get some
I
hot chocolate or something and get
think
moving.
we often have the advice, and I think it can feel like another job and frustrating to invite people into the kin keeping with us and to kind of give voice to that, to say,
Mhm.
"Hey, for whatever reason, I'm really struggling this time of year." My husband has been traveling for work a ton. And I was kind of like, "You ingrates, you don't even see that I'm doing this all by myself." And I kind of had to check myself at a certain point, and I sat my kids down and I said, "Listen, I need more help. As Dad's off in the great beyond. So I really need you all to pitch in and be my helpers because I'm struggling to get everything done." And I feel like my kids, it doesn't mean that they suddenly like don elf hats and are like, "Well, I will do everything and
Right.
it'll be
Leave it
fun."
to
But
me.
I think it's fine to invite people in. My sister and I had a really frank conversation and said, like, let's do gift exchanges and let's lean in on like what the present lists really look like and who can we take off of them and how can we do it less. We were originally kind of like, let's just forget it and just forget about gifts this year. And after a week, I think that both of us kind of felt like that's going to feel depressing. But the instinct is coming from a real place. So like, can we find a solution?
Well, so we asked our listeners.
Oh, I know they're going to solve it for
They
us.
are. There's some really good level setting advice in this episode. So we asked our listeners on our Facebook group and page. You can find them both at What Fresh Hell Cast or just searching What Fresh Hell Podcast on Facebook. We asked, how do you resist the urge to do all the things for and with your family members during the holidays? Which is funny. For us, it's like, how do you get the urge to do any of the things is what we've been talking about so far. But this is, how do you resist the urge to do everything, feel bad when you're falling short? How do you lessen the burden while retaining the magic? Because, yeah, I want the magic. I don't want the burden.
There
That's
you go.
that's what we're all about.
And I will say before we dive into our brilliant listeners that I think that s sometimes we feel this very strongly before the season begins. It's like seasonal dread in a way.
Mm,
And then I sometimes find that, like, once I get the lit candy canes up and I'm playing the music, it carries me along a little bit.
uh-huh. I think you're right. I think you're right. Well, Lisa had some advice that I think is maybe worthwhile for me. Lisa says she lessens her time around the people who do all the things. And she sticks to 2 or 3 traditions, makes it more special than doing all the things and cramming it in.
Huge. This is, something that I'm working on as I get into, like, the college season of my life
Mm.
is just, as you say, like, putting that slip of paper, taking that extra breath when I'm involved in conversations that are like, "Well, my child with their 12 APs and 8 varsity letters and 19, buildings that they've built, are," and that feeling comes up of like, "Why are you attacking me? And why are you this way? And why are you stabbing me in the face?" And trying to kind of say, "That's the way they've chosen to do things, and we have chosen to do things a different way, And both of those things are actually fun.
Yes, that's right. The person who has all of her Christmas shopping done already, except for your kid, and she's asked, 3 times for the list, and a list that you are somehow responsible for preparing in today's world, that's you can feel anxiety from that, which is not intentional. That is just somebody doing it differently than you do it, right? And you can say, uh, I don't have that.
It's not what we do.
Yeah, it's not how we
Cass
roll.
Cassie says the day after Thanksgiving and the day after Christmas are our days we look forward to. We don't schedule anything on those days with people outside of our household. The day after Christmas is my favorite day of the whole year to just wear pajamas all day, snack to our heart's content, and enjoy gifts.
Yeah, I kind of feel like nobody expects you to do anything else the day after Christmas. Maybe it's like pile in the car and go see Aunt Martha, but I feel like everybody just stays home the day after
And the day after
Christmas.
Christmas is my sister's birthday, so we're just rolling right into birthday
Oh, you roll right
celebrations.
into that.
I will
Yeah.
say this is not a tip for everyone, but this is how we do it, and it works for me. Your mileage may vary, as they used to say on the internet back in the day. The day after Thanksgiving, I find that I often have 20 people still hanging around at my house who need something to do. And you know what we do? We decorate the whole house for Christmas because
Yeah.
I got 20 people. I got 40 hands. I'm like, let's go.
Let's go.
We're
Right.
turning on Christmas music. And the kids are generally really into it, and it's free labor for me, and it's a fun activity, and we get a big tray of bagels and hot cocoa and turn on the music, and let's all decorate the house. It's kind of a trick on my part because I'm just forcing people to put up decorations in my house, and then by that day, it's all done. I
And
don't
you're
know, and
done.
it's like, "Okay, we're rolling right from one thing to the next."
That's a
I
great
like it.
idea. We have both sides of our family this year are gathering in the same town because my husband and I are from the same town. Anyway, we're and big families. I mean, we're gonna have like 2 dozen kids between the ages of 2 and 21 staying at various houses. And that day after Thanksgiving, that weekend is like, now what? That can get a little long. I
Yep.
feel like day after Christmas, you're playing with your
Now
new
come
toys.
decorate my house for free.
Right.
That's
The
my
day after
answer.
Thanksgiving, if you're not going to Best Buy at 5 a.m., then what are you doing all day? So, my husband, smart idea, he called up a local grade school and we're renting their gym for a couple of hours for not very much money. And we're going to let those kids descend and run around, which I
What a
think will
fun
buy us
idea.
some peace. Yeah. Some peace before
Yeah,
and after.
especially on the Northeast, it's often cold.
Yeah.
And so you can't really do the like, all right, here's a football, everyone go play in the yard.
Yeah. Michelle, I love this idea, and a lot of listeners had different versions. That she and her kids talk about the top 3 most important Christmas things to do. You ask your kids what they
Mm.
are. Everybody has their 3. Maybe you don't do everybody's all 3, but if somebody's appears on more than one list, you do. So she asked her kids for their top 3 Christmas things, and 2 of them were watch Muppet Christmas Carol. Okay, I think I can arrange that pretty
Phenomenal.
easily. Okay, yes. And to do a Christmas Eve dance party. Michelle says, we started this in Christmas 2020 because it was depressing because they weren't going to see anybody. They wanted to make it fun. So they had a Christmas Eve dance party. And now her kids are like, okay, number 1, we're definitely doing our Christmas Eve dance party. And number 2, we're watching a movie.
I love this idea too, because I think that we sometimes, as the magic makers and the kin keepers, are like, oh, then we've got to have the screening of Rudolph. And then I've got to make that crab soup that I make. And then I've got to, blah, 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 blah. And I've got to do the special box that I wrap with new pajamas and packs of hot cocoa. That's a now thing that we've done. And I really like the idea of asking your kids because I think there can be times where this is the famous story that I've told many times that my grandmother told my mother, how could you have Thanksgiving without cream white onions? And my mother spent hours making cream white onions and passed them to my grandmother who said, oh, I don't really like them.
Right.
And like,
Right.
right. You just think that there should be cream white onions on the table because you used to have them in 1911 on the table, And I really like this idea of focusing in on like, what are the things that are important? And we do they started during the pandemic too. This area, they have a dam that has like a little driving area around it. And there's drive-through, light up, silly things like a light up elf throwing presents and stuff. My kids still love it, and they're teenagers, but it's like that's part of our tradition. There's a restaurant we go to, and, like, that's what we do.
Yeah. Yeah, and what it isn't roasting chestnuts one by one, right? It's like driving them to
Right.
see these lights. I think I can manage that. Okay, we'll be back with even more ways to do less and make more merry. This is another Amy. She has some very good advice. She says, I try to remember that some things will just be better once the kids are older. This is not the year to decorate a gingerbread house because they're too little. There is time for the complicated stuff, and that time may be next year.
I so second, third, and fourth this,
Right.
and having kids who are grown. Someone was asking the other day about picky eaters on the, Facebook group, and I thought, I had the pickiest eaters in the world, and Amy had older kids and would say, "I don't know, they just grew out of it." I'm like, "No, no, no. Tell me how, tell me when, tell me what date they stopped just eating a roll at Thanksgiving." And the reality is now I don't remember, but now
Mm,
my kids, I mean, I just put stuff on the table and they eat it, and are there kids who don't still love salad? There are. And are there kids who there are certain things they will not eat? There are. But I do think that the making a gingerbread house is merry. If it's not, it's great to acknowledge that,
right,
you
right.
know?
Or leave it for next year or leave it for not this year. Although I will say, Target and Trader Joe's both make gingerbread houses where everything's like pre-cut. I mean, they are easy. I mean, like a 5-year-old can do this with a little bit of advice. So it's like you're guaranteed to succeed if you get one of those gingerbread houses. It doesn't have to be ready for good housekeeping.
Yeah, although someone just gave us a Halloween themed one very nicely. They came over for something and brought a
A
Halloween
Halloween gingerbread
themed
house.
gingerbread house.
Really?
And the amount of guilt I felt not assembling that Halloween gingerbread house, it crushed me, and then I finally just put it in the closet, and I was like, "Well, maybe we'll do it later, or maybe one cold day in February we'll make it," but we just didn't get to it, I'm sorry.
Well, you have to be aware of that stuff too, I think, right? Like my kids and their cousins used to get very complicated Lego things when they were
Mhm.
really too young to put them together. And so it turned into watch my father-in-law put them together, and then somebody would bump it, 2 hours into the process, and there'd be wretched sobbing because it fell apart. It's like, why are we getting a 6-year-old a 7,000-piece Lego set? This is
Right.
so they can watch their grandfather put it together. This doesn't seem
And
like,
while he, like,
making
yeah,
Christmas
says
bright.
bad words.
Right,
Exactly.
right.
Anna says, "It's okay if everything isn't every year. Most years we decorate cookies, but sometimes we don't. We often do the zoo light tour, but sometimes we don't. You can
Mm,
do it next year if this year isn't the year. Make your absolutely must do list very short."
I love this.
And this is, I go back to that suggestion of talking to your kids. I mean, I think that I sometimes feel it's a famous story in my family where I had my grandmother and her sister both lived into their 90s. And when I was in high school, they were in their 90s. And I would go every Sunday as a high schooler and drive over and pick them up and take them to church and then take them to IHOP afterwards and then drive them home. It was like my good deed. I was like, polish up my halo. I'm going straight to heaven. Every Sunday, I'm taking grandma and Mary to church and IHOP. And then at some point, my grandmother said to my mother, "Oh, sweet Meg, she just loves IHOP." Like, she didn't wanna go. Like, I was dragging them to the IHOP, basically. And I think that you have to watch that you're not dragging people to the IHOP thinking you're doing such a good deed, you know?
Mhm, mhm. This was good advice I hadn't really considered. Tiffany says she tries to stay off social media more in December to avoid the feeling I should be doing all the things. We have plenty of fun things we already do. I don't want to feel the need to do more because of what others are sharing. I think this is
Yeah.
definitely true. I mean, I live in New York City. And so you see people like, we're at the Rockettes, we're at the Nutcracker, here we are. And then you think like, oh shoot, I need to figure out a day for us to go to the Nutcracker. I mean, maybe next year, right? Maybe never. Maybe nobody really wants to go in your house. But if you look at social media, you feel like you have to be have all your kids in their matching tartan plaid outfits in front of the tree.
Yeah, and then I think that sometimes when you do something, my mother-in-law and I took my daughter to the Nutcracker when she was maybe 7 or 8. She was in the tartan plaid with the
Yeah,
bow and the,
right.
like, big skirt,
You're
and
there for the gram.
we were so there for the gram. We were taking pictures in front of the fountain at Lincoln Center, and we went, and we had a great time, and I do think maybe we went in 2019, and so then it was 2020, and there was no Nutcracker, whatever happened. But it can easily feel like, "Now we go to the Nutcracker every year. Oh, we have to go to the Nutcracker." And my husband and I used to love in Los Angeles, they have a sing-along Messiah. They do Handel's Messiah
Yeah.
with a beautiful chorale, but then you sing along with the big choruses, and we loved it. And then we moved to New York and, "Oh, well, what are we gonna do about our sing-along Messiah? That's our tradition." We went to one in the city, and it was genuinely not as fun. It just wasn't, I don't know, they didn't do it as well. And for us, it wasn't the same. And the next year, we're like, "Okay." We found ourselves sort of like, painfully buying another round of tickets to the bad sing-along
Yeah,
Messiah,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
we thought, "We could just not go. We could just not go to the Messiah." What about that concept? But it's funny how weirdly your brain is like, must slog through the
Right,
Messiah sing-alongs, 'cause
right.
it's what we do.
I have, like, the opposite thing, an opportunity being presented to me right now for Christmas, which is in Brooklyn. There's a neighborhood in Brooklyn called Dyker Heights,
Mm?
where people just go ham with the Christmas
Christmas
decorations.
decorations,
I've
yep.
never been, I've only heard about it. It's like that Jingle All the Way movie come to real life. And it's one of these things like, oh, it's bucket list, you have to go, you have to see the lights in Dyker Heights, which, for people who aren't from New York City, it's like an hour and 20 minutes from
Yeah,
my
it might as
apartment
well be
also in
like
New
you
York
have to see
City.
the sights in North
Fly
Carolina.
to
It's
fly to
like,
Omaha to see
yeah.
the lights, right, like, okay, maybe I'll do that. So it's like, "Oh, yeah, I'll do that." Anyway, there's this, fun, like, it's called Grab Your Group and Go, and I love it, and it's in New York, like, "Grab your group and go, we're gonna go to this museum, we're gonna go to this show," and so they're like, "We're doing it. We have a bus, we're going to Dyker Heights, there will be cocktails served in the bus. Grab your women friends, we are going to Dyker Heights," and now it's, like, being handed to me. All I have to do is show up and get on the bus,
That's
and
your
I'm like,
dream. You're like, "I want the magic, but I don't wanna make the
I
magic."
don't
Your
wanna make the
dream is
right, but now
real.
I'm like, "Do I wanna go?"
Yeah.
And so I'm going. I'm telling you guys I'm going because I know if I do, I'm gonna come back like, "You have to go see these lights." And right, I'm being given a very easy opportunity to go, if I
And I
want
think
to.
that's also a good question because I do find myself, and I think it is lingering from the pandemic a little bit. I don't
Yes.
wanna. I don't wanna. Like, I
I have
just
to put
feel
shoes on.
like,
Mhm.
I mean, we're doing our live shows and stuff, and it's much harder to get an audience to come out to stuff.
Mhm.
It's interesting because I just think that people have fallen in love with their sofas. God bless them.
Mhm.
Their sofas are comfy and there's good stuff on TV. I get it.
Mhm.
But I think the flip side of you don't have to go to the Nutcracker every year is watch the story of, I don't wanna do anything. Like,
Right.
are you just falling out of the habit of, would it be fun to all pile in the car and put on the horrible Christmas, this light show that we go to has a radio station that plays Christmas music, but it's like
Tinny?
Backstreet Boys
Oh,
singing,
oh.
like, some song that's called, like, "Don't Miss Me, Santa." I mean, it's torture basically, but,
Don't
like,
you
it is fun, and so I think you have to balance those 2 things.
We need a new album. There was that, like, Christmas covers album. It was, like, from the '80s with Run DMC and Whitney Houston and stuff, and they're still playing
Amazing.
that song. Like, it's a
"Do
yeah,
you
great album.
hear what
Right.
I
That's where the
hear?" That
Whitney
was
Houston
Whitney.
and
Love
and
it.
they still play those, like, 8 songs every year because we don't have a new one. We need, like,
I
a
think we might be
Billie
old, no
Eilish.
offense, but I think there are, like, when I turn on, like, the Christmas station, it's a lot of
They
Carrie
have
Underwood,
them.
and I just think, "This is sacrilege. Where is Nat King Cole?" I
Right,
like the
right.
oldies. Nobody's had, I mean, Mariah's got the market covered with, All I Want for Christmas Is
Mhm.
You. No one else has been able to break that market.
That might just be all I need. Maybe I just need to put that on and get in the holiday spirit.
Yeah, I really like, here's an insider tip. Josh Groban has a great Christmas album. I love it. I mean, I
Oh,
love
that's a
his
good idea.
voice, but he's
Anyway,
got a
like
really
getting
good one.
you're right, getting myself on this bus to go look at these Christmas lights, I'm sure it will be like a laugh and a half, and I'll come back glad I went. Just like when you go to any show or museum or whatever, like, "Oh, I'm glad I did that."
No, it's like going to the gym. You have to push through a little
Right.
bit, and that it doesn't seem right because there's also sunken cost fallacy where you think, "Well, I have to go and be miserable the whole time because I bought tickets." You don't have to go.
Right.
But watch that story that is, I already took my bra off. You'd be happy going to
I just
dinner.
wanna stay home.
I'm gonna be your phone a friend and call you and be like, "You have to go. You have to go. Get on the bus. Are you on the bus?"
Hannah says you have to be careful of what you think you should be doing. She says for her family, zoo lights, hell no. It sounds like it will be fun. This is Hannah talking. Sounds like it will be fun, but really it's cold, wet, crowded, and often the kids are too tired and overstimulated. It comes down to focusing less on what is supposed to be fun and being honest about what will actually feel festive and not sweaty and yelling at each other.
I mean, you're gonna have some of that, by the way.
Yeah.
If you have kids under 10, you're gonna have sweaty and non-festive moments
Well,
during the
that's it.
holiday
Like
season.
this bus to Diker Heights to look at the lights is there's no 4-year-olds on this bus, it's all
No,
like
that's adults
ladies with
only.
cocktails. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I do think if you have multiple kids, I mean, I had 3 very closely spaced, my kids are 18 months apart. The probability of 3 of them having a great time was pretty much 0 for 4 years. You had to kinda take some pain to do any of it.
Yeah.
Was somebody gonna be screaming and crying and hiding between your legs and being like, "I don't like that Santa?" Yes, that will happen.
100%. Jessica
100% chance.
Jessica has really good advice. She says, I try to cut down on the other stuff. No doctor's appointments or dentist appointments in December. We don't do extracurriculars in December when we can. I try to take as much of the other stuff off our plates.
Yeah, because it's true that when you have older kids, you also have, like, midterm exams. I mean, and the Christmas concert,
Concerts, right? And the
and
other concert.
you
Yep.
really don't need to add a lot of activities. Like, you're gonna be sitting there through the, like, beard so white, snow so white, whatever, like, Christmas concert,
Yep.
and if you've got 3 kids like I do, you're going to 3 of them.
Yep.
And then you've got a lot of studying and reviewing and midterms, and that's right. It's funny. I have a couple of people who I've been meaning to catch up with, and I'm like, "Well, I guess now I have to do it in January." Like, I certainly am not gonna catch up with them in December.
Yeah. Yeah. It's already the can we push season.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. I remember joking in mid-August that I was like, "Well, happy New Year, everyone," because it
Yeah.
does, like, back to school slides right into Halloween, slides right into Thanksgiving,
Yep.
Christmas, holidays, and it's New Year's.
Yep. We'll be back with even more ideas for less doing and more magic.
Amy, I like this idea from Elizabeth. We focus on our immediate family during the holidays and put our major travel to see families at other times of the year that are more conducive to travel and having a fun time summer, and B, not already packed with crazy school events, also summer.
I mean, this goes back to what I was saying before about um, in Pennsylvania in November on a, rainy morning in the 40s, you need to figure out somewhere for all these kids to go. They can't just go in the yard. Or maybe they can if you're 1,000 hours outside kind of family, but
Parents,
you might get
yes.
some resistance. So
No
anyway,
such
but
thing
yeah,
as bad weather.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's these things are easier in the summer when you're not also supposed to be at the other person's house and the other person's house and the party.
Yeah, but this also makes me think that one of the things we haven't discussed in this, how we're making decisions and the decision tree, is that there are a lot of expectations that other people have at this season. So it's not just you saying, we have to watch Rudolph because that's our tradition. It's also often everyone in your extended family saying, well, we have to be together. We have to see you during this season. And those boundaries, and this is a whole discussion that we've had on a bunch of other episodes, you have to really talk those things through, I think,
Mhm.
because, people saying, well, you have to this and you have to that. It's not always just as easy as saying, like, we've set our boundaries and no, and we're just doing immediate family. You can definitely do that. But, I mean, I know for our family, we try to alternate with my husband's family or my family every year, and that's what works for us. And then, on one side, we have 2 separate families, so it's like, okay, who's seeing who when, and keeping things balanced. And then if you have large extended families, as we do, the gift thing gets very quickly out of control, and it becomes kind of, as you've said, like the great gift card exchange, like, "Here's
Right.
your Best Buy in exchange,
Right.
here's your
Pass to the
Cheesecake
right.
Factory," or whatever, and the kind of I think it's worth having conversations about different people's needs and working from your place of maximum generosity that sometimes it's easy to kind of demonize the other people in that story and like, "Oh, that person always wants this, and we need to set our boundaries," which I'm not it sounds like I'm making fun of, but, like, I just think everybody does have different needs, and these are people's parents, who have had always spent their time with their kids at the holidays,
Mm.
and you can absolutely make any choices you want, but I think it's worth just a discussion about what the expectations are and whether or not those expectations can be reasonably met.
This gets really hard. I mean, I remember so well, when the kids were very little, right? Like the new baby at Christmas, the nativity child that's in your arms that's going from this one's house to that one's house, and whoever's house you're not at, they're asking you when you're getting there, and the house that you are at, they're saying you're leaving already. It can be really, extra stressful to be letting somebody down. Like, "What do you mean you're leaving?" And whoever's on her way over to see the baby, and it can be hard to be in a series of situations where you're letting somebody down even though you're really trying your best, but
And with
that
young
doesn't mean you
kids
shouldn't do what's best for you.
there's so many expectations around, they're gonna love this. They're gonna love it, and spoiler alert, they're gonna cry. They're not gonna love it.
Yeah.
My grandmother, she's coming up a lot today on the podcast. She famously crocheted my brother and worked on it for months, a Santa Claus, and it had bells. It was like a kind of stretchy Santa, and it had bells on the hands. And she must have worked on it for months. And it really was objectively an amazing piece of craft work. And it was presented on Christmas morning. And my brother was, of course, terrified of it to the
Oh.
degree that he cried the whole time. And then when she tried to leave, when she left for the night, chased her down the street, being like, "You forgot this." He really didn't want it in the house. He was terrified of it. And I think lots of people are good at handling those situations, and lots of people are, we told it as a funny story, but sometimes people get their feelings hurt about things, and
Yes.
the expectation. I mean, my famously, we had a Christmas where my parents had bought the grandchildren bicycles, and it was the big, like, "This is the year you're old enough for bikes, so here are 2 or 3 bikes under the Christmas tree that, I'm sure were expensive." And the kids came down and there were also Pokemon cards with the bicycles. That was like another thing under the tree. And they practically pushed the bikes out of the way to get to the Pokemon cards. And that's all
Mhm.
they cared about. Their eyes did not linger for a second on these bikes. And I think all you can do with those situations is talk in advance and say, "I know my kid would love the full set of this set of books, but understand that their Christmas reaction is not going to be as great as if you bought them 9,000
Tamagotchi, yeah,
Hershey
some
bars wrapped
right.
up or whatever, but
Keyring nonsense, yeah.
yeah, or whatever cushy or flippy toy that
Squishmallow of the day, yeah.
right, like, they will actually read these books for 5 years, and they
That's
will
a good
add a
point.
tremendous amount of value to their lives. But are you okay with the fact that on Christmas morning, if you want the, Jack in the Box joy of seeing them grab something and hug it and run around, then get them a Squishmallow. That's what you
Mhm,
should get them.
mhm, mhm.
I
This
do think that giving visibility on the overall experience is important.
this is, funny, I hadn't really thought about this, but, like, in our own family, there was, a year that a beautiful handcrafted rocking horse with somebody's name on it was given as the, like, "They're gonna love it" gift.
Yeah.
Reader, they did not love it, they wanted
Reader,
to play with the
they
Star
moved
Wars
right
thing.
on to the Star
Right,
Wars
that was
Legos.
not and so when the same people who have come up with, like, they'll love this crochet Santa and they don't, are now hounding you for, "Please just tell me what they actually want." And you're like, "Stop bothering me." Like, it does come out of I just want them to be happy, right?
I think
And
the whole time of the year is a good time for maximum generosity in terms of those things, and That's right. The grandma who's maybe calling you in October to be like, "Well, what do they want? What do they want?" And you're like, "Are you kidding me? I am still sewing a Raggedy Ann costume."
Right, right.
Right, they've had the experience of they want to just make it joyful, and I think you can also work with your kids on this, and this is something as your kids get older, you can have the meeting on Christmas Eve and say, "Listen, tomorrow's gonna be really exciting. You're gonna get a lot of exciting things that you want, and some things that you don't want, and some things that you aren't as excited about now, but you'll be excited about later.
Hmm.
You have one job on Christmas, which is making everyone who's gone out of their way to get you something feel good about that effort. That's your job. You're gonna receive a lot, and you have one thing to give, which is your joy, even if you don't feel it in the exact moment. Now, you can't really do that with, like, a three-year-old who's getting a
No.
rocking horse. That's people have to understand.
Yeah.
And some people, for the record, definitely don't and will be really, really mad.
Emily says one way to make things easier is to try deciding once and keep notes, she says, so you can adjust over the years and let muscle memory take over. So I do have a Christmas spreadsheet that I
I as
use
well
every year.
do.
Yeah, and you just start over and you erase everything that was in column B and you're starting over, but you have your list already. You're not going to forget somebody. And of course, living in New York, you have different everybody's got like, oh, I have to think of the woman who colors my hair, right? And my kid's karate teacher, what am I going to get for them? In New York, that's even more because you have the people who work in apartment buildings and things. So I have a long list of those people, but I have it ready to go. And that's the kind of thing that you can outsource to to your kids. This
Yeah.
needs to happen. As a family, we're going to thank these people. Here you go. Here's a pen. Get writing.
Get here, pick up a pen, start
Right.
writing. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely, absolutely.
Maybe that's about really spreading out the less work, more magic. I mean, kids are excited about doing the magic part, right? About the like leaving out the cookies with their toddler cousin. That part's exciting. It's a little less exciting to get them excited about, writing tip envelopes for their baseball coach.
Right.
But that makes it better for you, and I think it's always okay for older kids, I mean, to see that there is work, that it feels magic, but it's not it's not actually magic. There's a lot of hard work involved and appreciation that has to go into it. It's gonna be
Yeah,
hard for kids to detach from that.
I think that, we've talked a lot about I feel like this is one thing I've really changed my mind about by doing the podcast is, like, what are our family values? Like, really having that conversation, knowing what you value, and then kinda running stuff past that list. Like, well, my family value is that family comes first, but we have 8 kids and 23 sports, so we never see each other. Like, okay, that's in conflict with our family values. Are we making that decision in a short term? Like, just actually thinking things through and not letting life kind of carry you along, and I think that it's really worth doing that. I'm really gonna do that after this conversation is sit down with my family and say, "What do we want this Christmas to look like?" And then for yourself saying, "What do I want Christmas to look like? Do I want it to look like everybody's happy but me? Do I want it to look
Yeah.
like the SNL skit, 'I Got a Robe,' you know?
Right, right.
Or is it worth saying to my family, I'm gonna make all these cookies, I'm gonna organize the decorations, I'm going to do all of these things, but I'd love you all," and, say it in front of your spouse, like, "I'd love you all to really think about how you can make it great for me," or whatever, like, having these conversations, I think that's where a lot of the rub comes in, is sort of skipping the part where we say, "What if we could really think about what this looks like?"
Cassie says, make sure you're doing the highest leverage things. And I have the perfect example of this. A couple Christmases ago, there is a kind of cookie from the part of Pennsylvania where I'm from that's called a pepper cookie. And I've looked at it. I think it's really actually like from my area. Maybe I'll find a good recipe for you. I'll put the link in the show notes because it's amazing. It's kind of like having like a chai tea flavored cookie.
Mm,
It does have a little bit of pepper in it. It has like 24 ingredients. And I
right.
decided that I was going to make Christmas bright one year by making these pepper cookies which requires sifting flour and adding approximately 7,000 things, right? In my mother-in-law's house, by the way. So I do this, I make these incredibly complicated cookies. And they're cooling, and, then another relative walks in with a, bag of these pepper cookies
Oh.
purchased at the local bakery. Well, guess which ones everybody ate, right? Well, I
Right.
seized with rage that nobody wanted to eat the pepper cookies that I spent 2 hours making because the ones from the bakery were better because they know how to make them. Um, that was not a high leverage, activity for me. Nobody cared about it
Mm.
but me. Everybody was happy to eat the ones from the bakery. You know, had I checked with my family, it was a priority to nobody that I make these incredibly complicated cookies, and then I was mad nobody wanted them.
Yeah, the definite lane that you're looking to avoid is everybody's having fun but you,
Yes,
and everybody's merry and you're
they're
absolutely
eating those pepper
miserable.
cookies instead of my pepper cookies that I worked so hard on.
Yeah, and I think that, we've talked about this, it's a very difficult balance, and I don't like it when it becomes like, "Well, just do less, mom. You're putting it all on yourself, mom." That's not true, you're the kin keeper. You
Right,
are
it is
being
up to
looked
you.
to create all of this wonder, but our only locus of control is figuring out what our limits and our joyfulness comes from, and I think that, I was just thinking during the pandemic, we went skating, ice skating in Rockefeller Center under the tree, the 5 of us, and now we've been doing it every year, and it's incredibly expensive, like, it's really expensive, and that's one that's worth sitting down and saying, where are we enjoying this on a level of 1 to 10?
Mm,
Because if we do this, we're gonna cut out some other stuff
mhm.
because driving through the, you know,
The belly of the
lights
beast.
probably costs $25, and going to Rockefeller Center probably costs $500.
Right.
So, are we making the right choices? But if you skip the conversation, you're never gonna know. I have one more really practical one before we wrap up. Put a sticker on the best wrapped present and open it last. This is, like, the one thing that has ruined Christmas many times at our house. So that if you're getting your kids, socks, underwear, some school supplies, and an iPod, what am I, 9,000,000? And a laptop or whatever, the big thing they want. Put a sticker on the laptop, know where the laptop is, hide it behind the tree, and make sure that
In your
gets opened
building.
last.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Because we've often had the Christmas where, like, one kid's last gift is, a new guitar, and the other kid's last gift is underwear or socks, and it leaves us with a bad feeling. Put a
Mm.
sticker, save the best gift for last.
Mhm. My takeaway, I'm going to go with what Michelle says. She says, "I ask myself, what do I want my kids to remember about the holidays growing up and try to focus my attention there." And it makes me think when you're talking about the ice skating at Rockefeller Center. I mean, your kids will have that memory and they'll love it. And so maybe it's worth leaning into. And maybe it's like, okay, but they'll have that memory. We've done it.
We've done it.
We don't need to
We
keep
checked
doing
that
it. We've
box.
checked that box. Or they might say it's the most important thing in their Christmas season for all 3 of them, and then you say, "Okay, I guess we're going to do it." But you check, you make sure.
Yeah, because it's always surprising. We've done for people's birthdays and stuff, like, people write stories about the person. It's like a little birthday book with a lot of stories, and everyone who's had one done always says how surprising it is what the thing like, we did one for my dad, and one of the nieces said whenever we went, he would be setting up the volleyball net when we got there. Like, he always remembered, like, he was always trying to make it fun for us. He said, "I have no memory of ever doing that. I don't."
Mm,
And, like, that's where I think it's so great to have these conversations and say, "What is fun? What is magic?" And you definitely don't want your own memories of the holiday to be like, "Christmas stinks. Everyone
yeah,
has fun but me."
yeah, that's right. That's right. Make more magic.
Yeah, make the right magic, I
Make the
think.
right
Yeah.
magic,
Make
right.
make the high value magic, the high leverage magic.
Work more work magicer, not harder.
There you go, Amy. You have indeed solved it.
Uh, do you subscribe to our newsletter about
Yes,
once a month? You subscribe to it.
I
Yeah, so do
do. I
I.
subscribe. I love to hear what we're up to.
Well, I mean, if you wanna know what we're up to, what, book events I might have coming up, what Fresh Hell live shows we might have coming up, where else you can find us, we send it once a month. We're not gonna hound you. It's the perfect way to find out, "Oh, you know what else we put in there?" Things that we're, watching and reading and things. It's not you won't hear it on the podcast. You only get it in the newsletter. And here's how you get it. You go to whatfreshhellpodcast.com. There's a link in the sidebar. You sign up, or we'll put the link in the show notes for this episode. Get the newsletter once a month, and then you'll never have to like wonder if the Facebook algorithm is showing you that cool episode with the great guest or not.
Love it. Everyone, go subscribe. And with that,
Happy holidays.
go make magic, everyone. Leverage that high value magic. And we'll talk to you next week.
So long.